How much do you trust your friends? If you were spending the night with your friends, would you be worried that they would prank you in the middle of the night? You'd wake up wet or with whipped cream all over you? Or how much do you trust that you can spend the night at your friend's house? The person in this story might have helped to have had some second thoughts about spending the night somewhere with his friends, even as an adult. But there's always more to every story. My name is Jax Riley, and I like to make videos about unsolved mysteries, things that to this day or as the time of when I make videos has not been solved yet. But I also like to make people think about my video. I don't want just people to watch it for informational purposes, but be able to be like, what really happened. And that's why at the end of laying out the information in the video, I try to go over a couple possible outcomes for whatever we were talking about. So I, of course, have a couple videos out. It's been a while since I've made a video, so it's happy to be back. I also make music, Jax Riley Music. There will be a link in my bio and maybe even this video description to go find my music, because I have a new song coming out not too long from now. So check it out. You never know. This is actually kind of my side hobby, and then my main hobby is music. So we'll see. But let's get into the story. So this story is about Robert Wone. Now, there was maybe on Peacock, a documentary last year that came out about Robert Wone. And, everything I make a video about is going to have a crap load of other information you can find online. But here's my telling of what happened. So don't turn away. Still want you to hear what interesting things I may have to bring to the table, of course. But Robert Wone was a guy who grew up in Brooklyn. He had his family was from America, but he was, I think, third or fourth generation American. His great grandparents came from China. Of course, he was, Asian. And he was brilliant in high school and throughout. He was valedictorian of his high school class there in Brooklyn, and then went to William and Mary for his bachelor's degree. And he went to law school at Pennsylvania, or Penn, Ivy League school, of course, and graduated at this law degree in '99, and then became a lawyer at a pretty reputable place called Covington and Burling. I'd actually almost kind of heard of it. They handle a lot of high up things like people suing states, pretty impressive cases. But it was kind of a dream job for him, I believe. And it's even kind of one of those generic, lawyer jobs you see somebody like in a romantic comedy movie have or something like that. It's like, this is the cream of the crop lawyer job that, an Ivy League graduate would probably get. And that's what it was. So he had that job for a little while. He worked there for 6 years. And in that time, he continued to stay active in a lot of special interest groups to him. Of course, the biggest one being Radio Free Asia, which we're probably too young to remember now. But back when a lot of countries were, Radio Free Europe first started, and that was to send out world news to countries that were, communist, and they didn't really have non-state sponsored news, So they would have I believe it was like pirated illegal radio stations inside the country that would send information to them. And that's the same thing as Radio Free Asia. So it's countries like, I think at the time, China and Vietnam and places like that, they would have radio broadcasts go into the country. And he felt very strongly about a lot of things that were special interest groups, like Asian causes. I hate to say Asian causes, that doesn't sound right, but I think you know what I mean. But he was so dedicated to it that he actually quit his job and became legal counsel at Radio Free Asia there in their office in Washington, D.C. And Covington and Burling is in Washington, D.C., by the way. Sorry Forgot to say that. So he was still in the same town, of course. But he also had a friend in town. Well, first of all, Wone, he was married not long before, or he was married in 2003. Sorry. But, he was married and they lived, I believe, in Fairfax County, which is, I think it's nearly 30 minutes outside of where he worked at. There in north, or it's in D.C., but it's north of like the White House and stuff like that. But it's actually not too far from there. But Wone actually had a friend named Joseph Price, and he actually went to school with him at William and Mary in Virginia, and Joseph Price was also a lawyer, and he actually had a really nice house over on a place called Swan Street, which is a good bit north of the White House. Is from my understanding, it's a pretty nice neighborhood, and it was a row house. It's like a gigantic line of houses, and these nice 3-story row houses. I'll obviously have pictures of them on here, I believe, maybe. Or actually, I'll have a lot of pictures of the actual house. But so with that being said, Robert would, a lot of times, he would have shifts that were pretty late at the Radio Free Asia. I keep almost saying Europe. But he would stay later, and rather than want to come home in the middle of the night and bother his wife, he would, spend the night at Joseph Price's house there. That was, I believe it was less than 10 minutes from where he worked at Radio Free Asia. And he would, of course, tell Price that he was staying over and would call him beforehand. And, in this instance, he had told him days before. And days before, on Wednesday, August the 2nd, 2006, which is the special interest, by the way, that word, special interest day of this entire story. So Robert had told days beforehand that Joseph Price that he would, come by and spend the night if that was okay. They had set it up. And another interesting thing about this is that Joseph Price also lived in this house with his partner, Victor Zaborsky, and a man named Dylan Ward. And the three were in a, sexual relationship together, a polyamorous relationship. So it was technically 3 people that lived there, and they all knew Wone, of course, and Wone came home, and not too long after arriving would go to sleep, and he went to sleep, I believe it's reported around, they believe 10:30 at night or so, but at 11:30 p.m., neighbors at least reported that Victor Zaborsky was screaming at 11:30, and he would then call 911 at 11:49 that night. And the reason being because he found Robert Wone had been stabbed to death in the guest bedroom. And not much longer, what I saw said at 12:24 p.m., Robert was announced dead. So this seems kind of fishy, of course. But, later on, this is obviously something that's unsolved. But it seems like it should have been pretty easy to figure out what was going on. An autopsy would later reveal that there was evidence that someone had also tried to suffocate him before stabbing him in the neck, chest, foot, and hand. But they were never really able to pin it on anybody. The 3 in the house didn't really act like they knew anything, and they said that, which this is true, the only way that they said that they had believed they might have heard somebody coming through the door or going up the stairs, going down the stairs, but they never said they saw anybody. And, I guess a very smooth criminal could have done that. But time went on, and nothing really happened. Nobody was ever arrested. police that was investigating, they kind of acted like they were about to arrest somebody. You know, this was upsetting to Robert's family because, what should have probably been an open and shut case, at least some type of information should have been found. It wasn't, and it wasn't very simple, and police was not finding anything. And, Robert's wife, even years later, or a year and a half later, sometime in 2007, had actually gotten Eric Holder, Attorney General of the United States, I believe at the time, yes, to help out with the investigation. He even did it for free because he actually worked with Robert at Covington and Burling. So connections there as well. And like I said, nobody's been arrested to this day, not in connection with it, not in withholding evidence, and not for the actual crime. But things, of course, are not as simple as it's even more complicated than you think. So notice how Robert was killed in the guest bedroom of a house with 3 other people in it. So, I don't know see, a lot of times I try to make this where I try to give the facts of the story and then come into speculation into trying to change it, which is kind of hard to do with this one. Because right off the bat, EMS had came in and said that they thought that it's possible that the 3 men were hiding something. So they acted kind of fishy and didn't really act like they just saw their friend or just found the dead body of their friend. And they also said when they found the knife that was on Robert's body, the knife was smeared with blood and found, or not on his body, but it was found next to Wone. And they said that the knife did not necessarily match the wounds that was actually on his body. And there was apparently traces of blood found in the lint trap and the dryer. There was traces of white on the knife, as if somebody had taken a towel and tried to clear it off. The traces of blood in the lint trap would imply somebody was, trying to wash off the blood. Sounds a little fishy. If you wouldn't think the person that broke in would care about, washing things. And, it is true that somebody would have had to have broken in a very specific way because this is a row house. There's no side windows and probably not necessarily roof access either. I know they did have like a deck on this house, but it would have been hard for somebody to come in through the second story. This guest bedroom was on the second story from the street view, so somebody would have had to get a ladder and then broken through the window, which of course wasn't the case. So, they had said that we had left the bottom floor door open, and somebody could have gotten in that way, but they would have had to jump over a fence over the garden in the backyard. And, from what I've looked at, I looked at this on Google Earth. Now, you can find it. It's a 1509 Swan Street in Washington, D.C. Not very hard to find. It's a row house in the middle of a whole line of row houses, and you got a line right here, and then you got another line right here, and then there's shared backyard space all down in between them. So what's also weird is that there's not really a whole lot of breaks in this line of row houses. It seems to me somebody would have had to have been let in at somebody else's row house to even been possible for, this person would have had to have been running and jumping over multiple people's fences to get to where he was. I don't know if you can visualize what I'm talking about, but like if they're all in this shared middle community space and you can't go this way or this way, unless you're going into somebody's house, you'd have to just like jump over like 20 fences to get to this specific row house to kill a specific person. From looking at the house plans, which you can do because the house was just sold for $2.4 million not very long ago, so you can find it on Zillow. They had like 80 pictures on there, the inside of the house. Very nice house, I will say. Knowing somebody was killed in the front guest room, I don't know, but nice house. Check it out. I'll show some pictures on here. But, from where, and this is where I get specific here, what was also strange is that, and they had even noted this, is that I don't know what the sleeping arrangement was for these three men, but on the third floor, it's a master suite, the master bathroom. That's the only bedroom. On the second floor, there is a front bedroom and there is a back bedroom. So, in this back bedroom is where Dylan Ward was sleeping at, apparently, that night. And the front bedroom was the bedroom that Robert Wone was sleeping in. Now, how the house goes, there's also a basement, so there's 3 sets of staircases in this house. And the first floor where you come in at, you walk up the stairs, and when you come out of the stairs, the room that is right there where the stairs comes out on the second floor is actually Ward's room. So this means that whoever killed Robert Wone had to go up the stairs and then pass one man in his room and then go to another man across the hallway and then specifically kill him and then escape down the stairs and then go out the back way and run away. And nobody saw them, and none of the three men claimed to have known who did it. Didn't see anybody, didn't see the edge of somebody running away, or didn't see somebody climbing down a ladder. They did report that they heard some grunts and moans from Robert Wone's room, but the killer was gone before anybody got up. And then seemingly 20 minutes later is when actually Zaborski was the person they said called 911 and was screaming, or had screamed. Said a neighbor reported that. I guess they knew Zaborski's scream real well. I don't know. That's what I found in that case. So then it wasn't even Ward that found him, the guy that was across the hallway. So all this stuff, of course, we'll talk about it in the outcomes. But, you got to think these guys are the prime suspects. And police even told these guys that night that they were the 3 prime suspects in the case. Tell us anything you can about who killed this person. And they never act like anything was amiss. So there was even some sketchy stuff like Joseph Price's, the owner, the owner of the house and Robert's friend. His brother broke into that same row house 3 months later and stole like $7,000 of electronic equipment, and he was arrested for that, but the charges were, dropped. That was kind of strange. And the men eventually were arrested, actually. It wasn't the complete end of the story, but this was one of those arrests that's really not. It's almost like they're trying to arrest them for the real crime, but they're only getting them for something smaller. Like whenever somebody gets taken, some mobster gets taken down for something real small, but then they go to jail forever for it. Because they know they've been, they're giving them a harsher sentence because of what it's implied they probably have done. Or like, OJ getting sued for wrongful death, But the men or over 2 years later in 2008, they were arrested for obstruction of justice and tampering with evidence. They had evidence that at least one of the 3 men had altered evidence at the crime scene, planted evidence, or possibly covered up or lied about the truth of the crime or knowledge they knew about who did it. And they even claimed that the men had delayed calling the cops suspiciously, and it does match up. They said that Wone, got there at like 10:30 or so, and they ended up calling the police at like 11:49, and they claimed that somebody had screamed coming from the house at 11:30. So you got at least 20 minutes about of time where somebody apparently had found out that he was dead, and they didn't call 911, or dead, or at least laying there about to die. And that's not the world's longest time, I'll say, but I would imagine most people, the amount of time from them screaming that they've seen a dead body to the time that they've called 911 is probably like, what, a minute? Less than a minute? 30 seconds? Like, if this person is not yet dead and they're like, I got to do something, they would probably, that's like the first thing they would probably do, unless they were like an actual doctor or something like that. You know what I mean? So, and I didn't look into too much of that actual case as far as like or not, of course, this case, but like the trial that led to them getting, obstruction of justice. And it actually that trial went a year and a half itself after they were arrested. So this was like, I believe 2009 or 2010. But the judge said that they were not guilty of the charges, of course. The judge, in her statement, said that they believed that the men did know who killed Wone, but could not hold them to the standard of without a reasonable doubt that they truly, covered something up. And to this day, nothing's happened. And, maybe that documentary last year brings out some renewed interest in the case, but I hadn't really found much about it. And all three of the men, Zaborski, Ward, and Price, I couldn't find out where they lived at, but they're all still around doing whatever jobs they do. They never served jail time, I don't believe. And in fact, one of the things I saw said that when one of them was arrested, I don't think they arrested all three of them at a time, because one was like fleeing to Florida or something like that, But of course, they claimed it was some random person that broke into the house. So let's get into what are the potential things that could have possibly happened. So let's talk about the first one. And the first one is the first one that was accused, that it was just some random guy. Maybe, I know there's a South Park episode that has a bunch of people making fun of them, saying that their kid was stolen by a Puerto Rican guy. Obviously, the joke is from the JonBenet Ramsey case, kind of implying that their parents did know what happened, but they said it was like some random Puerto Rican guy was the one that they last saw her with, Of course, who knows what really happened in that case. But it's one of those cases where I don't know, JonBenet Ramsey case, did the parents actually kill her? Probably not, but did they know who probably did? Maybe. And that's kind of the same thing here. But it could have very well been this independent intruder. Let's say it is an independent intruder that had no connection with the other three men in the house and was just there to kill Robert Wone. And keep in mind that thing I said about him being in a very specific house, in a very specific room, or all on these row houses. He would have had to have found a way to get into somebody's house, maybe broke into the basement, came through the house, or jumped a bunch of fences behind where the row house was. They had even admitted that it would have been easy to come in the front or come in the back door on that main floor. It could have happened. If it was in the middle of the night, everybody was in their rooms, asleep, doing whatnot, a person could very foreseeably, if he, choked him, made sure he didn't make any sound, and stabbed him and killed him, it's possible. And maybe he was, maybe Robert had severe enemies. He worked for the Radio Free Asia. He was in a lot of special interest groups. He did a lot of work that it's possible it could make somebody angry. I don't think this sounds as silly as one would think. The only reason I don't think this was what it was is because there was so many instances of weird evidence things. Like, they really didn't find blood on Robert Wone. It looks like he had actually been cleaned, you know. And the knife just had like a couple of smears of blood that were not similar to, you know, somebody actually getting stabbed. And they'd even said that the knife was directly from some downstairs knife set that was in the kitchen, because it was missing that particular knife, and that knife was upstairs on top or next to Robert Wone. And, you know, blood in the lint trap, things like that. It seems too much like they were moving things around, and if it was some completely independent guy, I don't think he would have cared about, you know, leaving trails of evidence. He just came in and killed him and left, you know. So it's definitely possible. Like I said, I wouldn't have been very surprised about it. So here's the second outcome. You know, it was straight up one of the other three men in the house. Now, you know, say it was Price, Zaborski, or Ward, they killed them. Maybe, but I would probably say no. And the reason I'd say no is because they were able to find a lot of evidence that evidence had been moved, but they didn't really find evidence that any of them had done it. You know, there's really not alibis here because they were in the house that he was killed in, but, you know, there's really nothing that connects them to the actual killing of Wone other than being in the house at the same time. You know, just because you were found 2 bedrooms over doesn't mean that, you know, you actually did it. You know what I mean? So, you know, you may think differently, but I don't think it was actually one of the friends that did it, you know. That and outcome number 3 is what I believe really happened. And this is a very simple end to this video, because the other couple videos I did had more possible outcomes, but the cases were a little bit weirder, you know. But this one, I really could only think of 3 things it could have been. And you have the independent intruder. 2, it was actually one of his friends that was in there that actually did the killing. But number 3 is what I feel like most people will believe is what really happened. And I think it was an outside person that killed him. But I believe that they actually knew this man, the other 3 men in the house, or they were specifically in on it. Maybe they were paid off by somebody to tell them where Robert Wone was, get him in a situation where he could be killed, and it could be made to look like it was some random guy that came in and killed him without any other cooperation. You know, because you think all the stuff they did to alter the evidence, it doesn't seem like people that were just scared of what was going on. You know, like, you know, it's possible if somebody just found somebody dead in your house, you may panic and be like, oh my gosh, there's somebody dead in the house. They're going to think that I did it. But, like, you wouldn't, like, rearrange the body and rearrange the weapon that was used to kill him, you know, if it was still there. So that's what kind of makes this a little weird. And I feel like it's an absolute guarantee that they know who killed him, or at least have a pretty good idea. Now, could it have been somebody that they knew, like it was one of their other friends that was a hitman or something like that? I don't know if that's the case. I think, like I said, I think that they were possibly had some deal to get Robert in that situation where he was vulnerable to somebody just breaking in and killing him, because there's a lot of evidence that points to the fact that somebody could have actually just broken into the house. Now, like I said before, you know, you get people all the time that break into somebody's house to rob the place, and they find out that those people are actually there still, and then they end up killing them in the process. But see, that the reason why that is kind of shot down, isn't the case here, is that this person, like I said before, came up the staircase and walked past somebody's room that had a person in it to specifically go to Robert Wone's room and not go back up to the master suite to see who was up there or go downstairs to see who was there. Apparently, he went straight to Robert's room and killed him, and that just had to be insider knowledge, you know. And like for them, him to even know what room he was in is also kind of like this had to have been set up by these guys. So, will we ever see them get arrested for it? Probably not, because they were already tried for basically what they probably did. You know, it'd be considered obstruction of justice. Maybe if they could prove that they knew the guy and specifically agreed to let him in to kill Robert Wone, maybe it'd be accessory to murder, I guess, or maybe even considered murder. I don't know. But we're never going to see anybody arrested in this case, like I said, because whoever killed him was probably a special killer, somebody that probably gets hired to kill. You never know. But the only people that ever probably would have been arrested was the three men in the house, Price, Zaborski, and Ward. But like I said, they've already been tried. They're not going to go anywhere. So, kind of a sad case in that sense. You know, it's possible that he was directly betrayed, or Wone was directly betrayed by people he thought was his friends, especially Price, who apparently was one of his best friends. In the very least, they were not able to stop a crazed maniac from breaking in and killing him. Like I said, at the very, very least. But at the most likely, they probably, helped whoever did kill him. Not that I think most of us are in danger of our friends doing that to us, but you never know. And I think that's what made this case so interesting. So, thank you for watching. Like the video if you like it. If you didn't like the video, then like it anyway. If you've watched this far, you must have liked something about it. And maybe even subscribe, listen to my music. I don't know. Maybe not do any of it. But regardless, thank you for watching. This was Jack's Unsolved with Jax Riley.